There are rules that make sense, and there are rules that exist simply because someone with a little bit of authority decided they wanted to feel powerful over other people. When my HOA sent me a notice saying that above-ground trampolines were banned in the neighborhood, I did what any reasonable person would do. I read the rule carefully, thought about it seriously, and then found the most creative legal solution that anyone in the history of that neighborhood had ever come up with. I dug a 10-foot crater in my backyard, installed the trampoline at ground level, surrounded it with carefully placed rocks and scientific-looking signage, and opened the neighborhood Meteor site. The HOA never saw it coming, and legally there was absolutely nothing they could do. Let me take you back to where this whole thing started. I have 3 kids. Anyone who has kids knows that a trampoline is not a luxury. It is a survival tool. It is the difference between children who have somewhere to put their energy and children who redirect that energy into every object and surface inside your home. I had purchased a large above-ground trampoline and set it up in the backyard, and for several months it was the single greatest investment I had ever made in the peace and sanity of my household. The kids loved it. Their friends loved it. Every afternoon after school, the backyard was full of laughter and jumping and the kind of pure, uncomplicated joy that only children on a trampoline can produce. Then the letter arrived. It was from the HOA, formal, official, and very clear. Above-ground trampolines were prohibited under the community guidelines due to concerns about neighborhood aesthetics and liability. I needed to remove mine within 30 days or face fines that would increase weekly until the trampoline was gone. I read the letter twice. Then I read the specific rule they were citing, and I noticed something very interesting. The rule specifically prohibited above-ground trampolines. It said nothing whatsoever about in-ground trampolines. Nothing about trampolines that sat at or below the level of the surrounding yard. Nothing about the trampoline itself as an object. Only about its position relative to the ground. I sat with that for a moment. Then I called my neighbor Dave, who happened to work in landscaping and excavation. I explained what I was thinking. He was quiet for a second and then started laughing. He told me he could have a crew out within the week. I also did my homework carefully before touching a single shovel. I checked every local ordinance related to residential excavation. I verified that digging within your own property for landscaping purposes was entirely legal, as long as it stayed within property lines and met basic safety requirements. I confirmed that an in-ground trampoline, properly installed with appropriate edging and safety measures, was not prohibited by any local code. And most importantly, I reread the HOA rule one more time to make absolutely certain that nothing in it covered what I was about to do. Nothing did. I sent the HOA a formal response. I thanked them for bringing the above-ground trampoline rule to my attention and informed them that I would be coming into full compliance with their guidelines within the next 2 weeks. I told them the above-ground trampoline would be completely gone. Every word of that was true. Then Dave and his crew arrived. The excavation took 3 days. A 10-foot wide, 10-foot deep crater right in the center of my backyard. The trampoline was installed at the bottom, sitting perfectly at ground level when viewed from the yard above. Proper edging, safety padding around the rim, everything done correctly and safely. From above, it looked like a perfectly flush in-ground installation. From the sides, it was clearly a professionally done excavation with the trampoline sitting neatly at the base. But then came the part that turned a clever solution into something the entire neighborhood is still talking about. My youngest had recently become fascinated with space and geology after a school project on meteor impacts. And as I stood looking at this freshly dug crater in my backyard, an idea came to me that was so perfect, I could not believe it had taken me that long to think of it. If the HOA wanted to be particular about rules, I was going to give them something that followed every single rule while being completely and utterly unforgettable. I ordered several large, interesting-looking rocks from a landscaping supplier. I printed professional-looking scientific information boards on weather-resistant material. I designed a small entrance sign, and over one weekend I transformed the crater area into what the sign at the entrance now officially called the neighborhood, Meteor Impact Site and Educational Geology Experience. The rocks were positioned around the rim with numbered markers. The information boards explained the science of meteor impacts, crater formation, and geological history. There was a small laminated visitor's guide available at the entrance. And right at the bottom of the scientifically curated meteor crater was a perfectly installed in-ground trampoline that my 3 kids used every single afternoon. The HOA inspector arrived on the 31st day, the day after my compliance deadline. He came to verify that the above-ground trampoline had been removed as required. He walked around to the backyard gate, opened it, and stopped. He stood there looking at the neighborhood Meteor Impact Site and educational geology experience for a long moment without saying anything. I came outside and greeted him pleasantly. I asked if he was there to confirm compliance. He said yes. I pointed out that there was no above-ground trampoline anywhere on my property. He looked around the yard. He looked at the rocks. He looked at the information boards. He looked at the sign. He walked slowly toward the crater and peered down at the trampoline sitting flush at the bottom. He asked me what exactly he was looking at. I explained that it was an in-ground trampoline installed within an educational geology installation on my private property. I pointed out that the HOA rules specifically prohibited above-ground trampolines. I asked him to confirm whether anything he was currently looking at was above ground. He had no answer for that. He took photographs and left without saying much. 3 days later, I received a letter from the HOA. They had reviewed the situation and consulted their guidelines. They could not identify any specific rule that covered in-ground trampolines or privately installed educational landscaping features. The matter was considered closed. I framed that letter. It hangs in my garage right next to the laminated visitor's guide. But what happened after that was something I genuinely did not expect. Word spread through the neighborhood the way good stories always do, fast and with enthusiasm. Families started asking if their kids could visit the meteor site. I said of course. Weekend afternoons became a regular thing. Kids would come over, read the information boards, look at the numbered rocks, and then take turns on the in-ground trampoline at the bottom of the scientifically curated crater. A few parents told me it was the most creative thing they had seen anyone do in response to an HOA rule. One neighbor printed the story and shared it at a community meeting. The HOA board sat through that meeting in complete silence. My kids still jump on that trampoline every single afternoon. The meteor site is still fully operational. The HOA has not sent me a single letter about it since. Here is what I want you to take from this. When someone gives you a rule, read it completely and carefully before assuming it means what they want it to mean. Sometimes the most powerful response to an unreasonable restriction is not anger, not confrontation, not a legal battle. Sometimes it is creativity. Sometimes it is finding the solution that follows every rule so perfectly and so imaginatively that the people who wrote those rules have absolutely no idea what to do about it. They banned above-ground trampolines. My trampoline has not been above ground since, and somewhere at the bottom of a 10-foot educational geology crater, 3 kids are jumping on it right now.